In 1957, Plymouth sold over 760,000 cars, outselling nearly every rival and putting America on wheels. But just a few years later, sales had collapsed, its identity fading and models vanishing from driveways. How did Chrysler's everyday car empire go from market hero to silent casualty? To find the real cause behind Plymouth's quiet downfall, we have to start at the moment it all began. On July 7, 1928, a new name joined the American car market. Walter P. Chrysler, already known for bold moves in Detroit, introduced the Plymouth Model Q at Madison Square Garden. Chrysler's goal was not just to add another badge to his growing company. He wanted to challenge Ford and Chevrolet directly, offering something they did not: a car for ordinary families that did not cut corners on safety or engineering. The name Plymouth came not from the famous rock, but from something far more familiar to rural drivers: Plymouth binder twine. Chrysler believed that, just like the twine found on nearly every farm, his new car should stand for reliability and practicality. An internal memo at the time made the connection clear. The car was meant to be as essential to American life as the twine that tied the nation's harvests. Right from the start, Plymouth set itself apart. Its very first model came equipped with hydraulic brakes, a feature that Ford and Chevrolet only offered years later. In 1928, this was a serious selling point. Early advertisements did not just talk about low prices, they promised better stopping power and a safer ride for families, all at a price that undercut rivals. That technical edge, combined with a focus on value, helped the new brand find its audience quickly. By the end of its first year, nearly 30,000 Plymouths had rolled off the line. The message was clear. American buyers wanted more than just the cheapest option. They wanted a car that felt modern, solid, and trustworthy. Chrysler's gamble had paid off. With Plymouth, he had created a brand that did not just compete. It gave everyday drivers a reason to expect more from their car. That reputation for practical innovation would become Plymouth's signature, shaping its identity for decades to come. In the late 1950s, Plymouth had become a fixture in American driveways. The numbers tell the story. In 1957, more than 762,000 Plymouths rolled out of factories, making it one of the top-selling brands in the country. Dealers recall those years as a golden era, when families lined up on Saturday mornings to take home the latest Fury or Belvedere. The Plymouth badge meant something: dependable, no-nonsense transportation that didn't skimp on style. But just a few years later, the mood began to shift. In 1961, Plymouth's bold new look landed with a thud. Sales plummeted to 207,000 cars, a staggering drop that left showrooms quiet and managers anxious. One longtime dealer remembers the phones going silent, customers drifting toward rival lots. For the first time, Plymouth's grip on the American mainstream felt uncertain. Yet even as the brand weathered that downturn, it refused to fade into the background. Engineers and marketers looked for ways to recapture lost ground, searching for excitement that would bring buyers back. The answer arrived in 1964, with the debut of the Barracuda. This was no ordinary family sedan. With its fastback silhouette and wraparound glass, the Barracuda offered something new, a sense of fun and performance pitched straight at a generation hungry for speed. Inside dealerships, the buzz was palpable. The Barracuda wasn't just a car, it was a statement that Plymouth could change with the times. Sales staff pinned their hopes on this fresh direction, hoping it would pull the brand out of its slump. For a moment, it worked. The Barracuda drew headlines and new faces into showrooms, hinting at a future where Plymouth could be both practical and thrilling. But beneath the surface, challenges were gathering. Pressures that would soon test the brand in ways no one in 1957 could have imagined. In 1973, Plymouth reached a milestone no one in Detroit could ignore. Production topped 973,000 vehicles, an all-time high for the brand. The Valiant and Volare sold in huge numbers, and the Barracuda's muscle car image still brought traffic to showrooms. But that sense of momentum did not last. In October of that year, a sudden oil embargo by OPEC sent shockwaves through the American economy. Gas lines formed overnight, and prices doubled in a matter of weeks. For car makers who had built reputations on power and size, the new reality was unforgiving. John Miller, a senior product planner at Plymouth, recalled the scramble inside Chrysler's Highland Park offices. He said years later that they went from talking about horsepower to talking about miles per gallon. The Barracuda, once a symbol of American performance, became a casualty of the new order. Emission standards tightened, and the cost of redesigning big V8 engines for cleaner air and better fuel economy proved too high. By 1974, the Barracuda was gone. The shock did not stop with fuel. Federal rules now demanded 5 miles per hour bumpers and catalytic converters, adding weight and slashing performance. Plymouth's engineers watched as their cars grew heavier, slower, and more expensive to build. The numbers told the story. Production dropped by more than half in just 2 years. What had been a brand defined by affordable innovation was now caught in a web of external pressures. Plymouth's identity, practical and dependable but never flashy, began to blur. The era of easy growth was over, replaced by a sense of vulnerability that no one in the company could ignore. Chrysler's back was against the wall in the late 1970s. The oil shocks and new regulations had gutted Plymouth's muscle cars, but the company wasn't ready to give up. Inside Highland Park, engineers led by John Miller began rethinking what a Plymouth could be. The answer came in the form of the K-Car platform, a simple front-wheel drive chassis designed for efficiency and low cost. In 1981, the Plymouth Reliant made its debut. It wasn't flashy, but it was exactly what buyers needed: reliable, economical, and easy to maintain. The Reliant, paired with its Dodge Aries sibling, quickly became a lifeline for Chrysler. Dealers watched as sales steadied, with the Reliant drawing in families who were wary of gas prices and looking for value. But the real breakthrough came in 1984. That year, Chrysler introduced the Plymouth Voyager, America's first modern minivan. The idea was radical. Take the K-Car's lightweight platform and stretch it into a family hauler with sliding doors and a flat floor. The Voyager was an instant hit. In its first year alone, over 209,000 Voyagers left the factory. By 1988, annual sales peaked at more than 422,000, making the minivan a fixture in American suburbs. For a time, Plymouth was back in the game, not with muscle, but with ingenuity. These engineering pivots didn't just save the brand, they redefined what an everyday car could be. Still, even as the Voyager and Reliant brought buyers into showrooms, new challenges were brewing. The lines between Plymouth, Dodge, and Chrysler were starting to blur, and the sense of a unique Plymouth identity was growing harder to maintain. By the early 1990s, Plymouth no longer stood apart in the showroom. Every model wore a familiar face, borrowed from Dodge and Chrysler. The Neon, Breeze, and Voyager, once the backbone of Plymouth's promise, became indistinguishable from their corporate siblings. Even the Prowler, a bold attempt at retro flair, shared its underpinnings, and soon its badge, with Chrysler. This relentless badge engineering drained away the last traces of Plymouth's identity. Buyers looking for something different found only echoes of cars they could buy down the row. The numbers reflected this confusion. After decades of steady volume, Plymouth's annual sales fell below 200,000 for the first time in 1990. The downward slide never reversed. By 1998, the roster had shrunk to just 4 models: Neon, Breeze, Voyager, and Prowler. None offered a clear reason to choose Plymouth over Dodge or Chrysler, and most dealers saw the same cars with different badges parked side by side. Internal charts from those years show a stark picture. The once crowded lineup now reduced to a handful of overlapping models, each fighting for a shrinking slice of the market. As the decade closed, Plymouth's share had dwindled to a fraction of its former self. The brand that once defined practical American motoring now existed mostly on paper, its purpose lost in a sea of corporate sameness. The stage was set for a decision that would bring Plymouth's long run to an end. On November 3, 1999, Chrysler's president Jim Holden stepped before the press and delivered the news that many in Detroit had quietly expected. Plymouth, once a pillar of the company's lineup, would be discontinued. The official statements pointed to a hard business reality. With models like the Neon and Voyager nearly identical to their Dodge and Chrysler counterparts, there was no longer a clear reason for Plymouth to exist. Holden put it plainly. Plymouth had become a duplicate of Dodge. The decision was purely economic, not sentimental. The logic was as stark as the numbers. Plymouth's annual sales had slipped below 150,000 units, a shadow of its former strength. The Breeze, Plymouth's mid-size sedan, was dropped immediately, with the last cars leaving the factory as 2000 models. Meanwhile, the Voyager minivan, once a groundbreaking product, was quietly rebadged as a Chrysler, its identity erased in a matter of months. Dealers received instructions to wind down Plymouth inventories, and advertising budgets vanished overnight. Inside Chrysler, the move was framed as a way to concentrate resources on brands with clearer identities. Dodge would carry the performance mantle, while Chrysler would focus on luxury. Plymouth, which had once promised value and innovation, was now seen as redundant. The phase-out was designed to be swift and clinical, with no dedicated factories to shutter and no jobs lost. For Plymouth, the end began not with a bang, but with a memo and a press release. The countdown had started. After the announcement, Plymouth's catalog shrank to a shadow of its former self. The mid-size Breeze disappeared first, quietly dropped after the 2000 model year. The Voyager minivan, once a staple in suburban driveways, returned in showrooms with a Chrysler badge. Even the Prowler, a low-volume retro roadster that briefly hinted at a revival, was handed off to Chrysler. By the start of 2001, only the Neon remained. Once a bright spot in the compact segment, the Neon now stood alone, its fate sealed by decisions made far from the assembly line. Inside the Belvidere, Illinois plant, workers watched as the final units rolled down the line. Each day brought the end closer, the line moving a little slower, the sense of purpose fading. Production records from that last year show just 38,657 Plymouth Neons built, a number that once would have represented a single month's output at the brand's peak. On June 28, 2001, the final Plymouth, an unremarkable silver neon LX, completed its journey. There was no ceremony, no speeches. The car was quietly driven off the line, closing the book on 73 years of American automotive history. Chrysler's internal memos later cited the cost savings from the phase-out. With no Plymouth-only plants to close and no jobs lost, the company estimated it could redirect tens of millions of dollars to its remaining brands. For the people on the line, though, the numbers mattered less than the feeling that something familiar was vanishing. The badge that once stood for everyday reliability was gone, leaving only memories and a final tally in the production log. Long after the last Plymouth left the factory, a different kind of loyalty keeps the brand alive. At club gatherings across the country, rows of Barracudas and Superbirds gleam in the sunlight, their owners swapping stories and restoration tips. Mark Daniels, president of a national Plymouth Owners Club, manages a registry that tracks more than 5,000 surviving Barracudas, each one a testament to the dedication of its caretaker. Auction houses regularly post headlines when a pristine Superbird crosses the block for over $150,000, drawing crowds who remember the days when these cars ruled the streets and the track. The Prowler, once dismissed as a curiosity, has found its own following. Forums buzz with advice on upgrades and meetups, and demand for well-kept examples has only grown since production ended. Even the Neon, Plymouth's final model, inspires a passionate community. Online groups share tuning guides and parts sources, keeping these compact sedans on the road and in the conversation. For many, owning a Plymouth is about more than nostalgia. It's about preserving a piece of American ingenuity, one car at a time. The brand may be gone from showrooms, but its spirit thrives wherever enthusiasts gather, engines rumble, and a battered badge still means something special. Dr. Elena Ruiz, a professor of strategic management, often uses Plymouth's story as a textbook example of portfolio rationalization. She points out that Chrysler's decision to retire Plymouth was not just about declining sales or nostalgia for lost muscle cars. It was a calculated move rooted in the realities of brand management. In the late 1990s, Chrysler found itself with three brands: Dodge, Chrysler, and Plymouth, each competing for the same buyers with nearly identical cars. The overlap bred confusion, not loyalty. Internal documents from that period show how resources were being stretched thin, with marketing budgets and engineering teams divided across a shrinking set of products. Ruiz explains that the logic was simple. When a brand no longer offers something unique, it becomes an unnecessary expense. By consolidating, Chrysler could focus its investments on brands with clearer identities: performance for Dodge and luxury for Chrysler. The phase-out of Plymouth allowed the company to redirect funds and attention, avoiding the costs of maintaining a badge that had lost its distinct purpose. In the end, the lesson is clear. In a crowded market, clarity and differentiation are not just virtues, they are requirements for survival. Today, fewer than 1% of new cars sold in the United States carry a truly distinct badge. Most share platforms, features, even names with rivals. As automotive giants merge and streamline, the lesson is clear. No brand, however iconic, is immune to erasure by corporate calculus. What disappears from our roads often vanishes from our culture too. Drop your thoughts below. What brand do you fear could be next?